Capitalism could not survive in a culture dominated by mysticism and altruism.
The world is changing. The age of the consumer is over.
Stand up for freedom, no matter what the cost. It can help to save your soul and maybe your country.
Do you understand the forces shaping events in the world around you? Do you want to know the answers or just the issues? Do you know the secrets of prosperity economics? Live from Salt Lake City and at freecapitalist.com across the nation, you're listening to the free capitalist himself, Rick Koeber.
All right, hey everybody, it's time to wake up, turn your brain on. Hope everybody's doing pretty good out there in free capitalist land. I know today was the start of United States of America versus Bundy, and so a lot of people have been giving broadcasts, giving you updates and that kind of thing, so we got a lot more to do today. We're going to cover a lot of different things. Hey Richard, hey Twyla, good evening. Glad you're joining us. Hey David, glad to see people chiming on. I know I took a break from the weekend, if you will. I know some of you were asking if I was going to be on Saturday and Sunday. Sometimes I go on the weekend, but this weekend I was busy going down to the jail, visiting some of our friends and doing some legal stratagems. So, hi Kelly, how are you? Hey, I saw your broadcast. Good job. You and John are the best. Picture to John and Kelly when I had my beard and I just shaved my mustache to see if I could fit into maybe John's Amish family tree. John liked the picture, but Kelly didn't. I'm not sure what the issue was there. So, hey, tonight's not going to be a super long call, but I wanted to have a brain-on conversation with all of our friends, hey Alma, about how we win in the fight for liberty. And I want to talk about some specific ideas of fighting, both in the court and also in day-to-day life with government generally, with our families, with our day-to-day life, etc. Hey, John. And I actually feel bad. Last night I had a great dinner out with some friends. Actually, one of the favorite things that has happened to me since I've been here in Las Vegas, Nevada, sitting down. One of my favorite things to do is to sit down with people who love liberty and where you have that like-mindedness and just share a good meal at the end of a hard day. There are very few things more enjoyable than that. And we had a great experience last night with some friends, and I felt bad because I got into teaching mode a little bit, and I went a little overboard with some teaching, and it was doing a little listening and lots of talking, but I get pretty passionate about this idea I want to share with you tonight a little bit, and that is, in the freedom movement, the reason I feel bad is sometimes this conversation needs to be a little bit more personal and needs to be a little bit more thoughtful than you can have sometimes. And in the freedom movement, you often find yourself, no matter how dedicated you are, you get to the point where you say, can we win? Is it really worth fighting? When you start to see what's happening in the world around us, and you see things that get discouraging to you, and you see things that are frustrating to you, even the most ardent activists, you get to the point where you look in the mirror and you say, "Good grief, is it even worth it?" And especially as you get real passionate in the time and then the consequences, and sometimes it's not just defeatism. Sometimes you feel like you're beating your head up against the wall because you feel like you keep doing the right things, and you feel like you're giving all you have, and you're trying to motivate your friends and your family to do the right thing, and you still just don't feel like we're cracking it open here. We're not making the progress, and there's some truth to that. One of the sobering realities we often face is in the liberty movement for the last 100 years, there have not been any major breakthroughs in terms of changing the tide of what's happening to the growth of government and the overreach of government, particularly federal and state government, into our day-to-day lives. And it's tempting to become anti-government. It's tempting to give in to a lot of the voices of people who are cynical, a lot of the people that are half-educated, a lot of the people that are, hey Chase, and a lot of the people that are, kind of whimsical with their ideas of the day. And the real question comes is, can we win? Can we really win? Hey Dave, and one of the things, I've mentioned to you before, as I've started to do a lot of work in the legal world over the last decade, in the legal world, most of the time people lose. Most of the time, both sides feel like when they walk away, they've lost something in like civil litigation. And in criminal litigation, whenever it's the government, whether it's the state government or whether it's the federal government, whenever it's the government on one side and a private citizen on the other, generally people lose. There's a great decision. It's called the Schillinger decision. It's a 10th Circuit case that's out of Wyoming, where one of the judges says, it's getting to be a rarity for people who are willing to fight and who are innocent to actually even go to trial. So much so that it's almost impossible to judge what a fair trial is anymore because there are so few of them. And so few of them in comparison to the grand scheme of things. Hey, Michael. Hi, Lisa. Good to see you, too. And so, so with that said, again, we're constantly battling this idea of discouragement, and we do sometimes do a good job of lifting each other up and patting each other on the back, say love you, support you. There's no substitute for that kind of friendship, but there's more to it than that, my friends. There really is a way to win, and as some of you know, for example, when we won the case up in Oregon, I'll just talk about that for just a second. A lot of people didn't see that coming, didn't think you could win, and you don't always win, but you can win, and the USA v. Bundy up in Oregon is a great example to that. And hey, New Mexico, awesome! Glad to have you on. But what I had hoped would come out of that is a belief in people that it is worth fighting because you can win, and it's not just in the courts, by the way, but certainly in the courts you can win. But it requires some paradigm shifting. Okay, if you know what that word means. It does really require some paradigm shifting. It's not just for the taking. In other words, it takes more than just saying, yeah, I want to win, give me 3 tips and let's go do it. And it doesn't matter whether it's a court case or whether you're dealing with legislation or social issues. It doesn't matter whether you're dealing with personal issues or family issues. Liberty is the path. And it's the path for the greater happiness, and it's the path for the greater success and prosperity. And hey, Shine, welcome from Mexico. Do I look that tired? Yeah, I'm a little tired. It's been a long day. I've been fighting some of these people that don't want us to win today. And at the end of the day, it feels good to have left it all out there on the battlefield. But no way was I going to not engage in some scintillating free capitalist exchange here on Facebook tonight. But here's the thing, my friends. You can win, we can win, we will win, but it requires 3 things. You've heard me say this before. You've got to be informed, you've got to be educated, and got to be organized. And those are easy words to say, but those are all 3 things very hard to do. And one of the things we have to be informed in is our perspective, and our paradigm really matters. And I want to talk about kind of what I called on the title of this live stream, kind of Liberty School 101. And going back to school, because a lot of times when you don't know what you don't know, you don't understand why things aren't working. Hey, Colorado, and yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to look so tired. Here, I'll slap myself and get my color back a little bit. The flesh is weak, but the mind is not. My mind's awake, so don't you be discouraged. And but listen to this. I used this analogy before, and some of you who remember some of the seminars I did from back in the day, 10 years ago or more, you'll recognize this analogy, but some of you, this will be brand new to you. I want to share with you just a made-up story here, but it illustrates a point that we're up against. And I want to talk about the lesson, kind of the moral of the story, if you will. And yes, we are standing against the wickedness, all of us together, Lisa. But listen to this story. I'd like you to consider this, okay? I want you to imagine in your mind that you really invest here for a second and then follow me. Follow the logic here with this story. I want you to imagine that there's a man and his son, and they've gone out for a drive on, let's say, a Saturday morning. And let's say it's like a 15, 16-year-old son, and he's trying to show his dad, how good he is at driving. And they're out driving maybe on some backcountry roads or whatnot, and they're driving fast and having a good time, and the son's showing off a little bit or whatnot, and they're having a good time. They come upon an intersection, and tragically, and this is just a made-up story, so don't get to feeling too bad, but follow the logical test here. This is a mental test. So you got a man and his son, and they come upon an intersection, and there's traffic coming the other way, and an oncoming traffic runs a stop sign and smashes into their car and instantly kills the father. Okay, and the son is critically injured. Passers-by see the accident, they call the ambulance, they see that the son is injured, they see that the father has died. The ambulance comes and puts the son in the ambulance, and takes the son to the hospital. When they arrive to the emergency room, the medical team comes out from the hospital. They pull the boy, the son, out of the ambulance, and he's on the gurney, and he's in critical condition. Imagine how that might look. And the emergency room doctor comes to the side of this boy, takes a look at him, after looking at all of the vitals and looks at what needs to be done. And the emergency room doctor says, this boy needs urgent help, but I cannot operate on him because he's my son. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. Now, I didn't do a great job of telling that story, by the way. I just wanted to do a quick version of that, but think about that for a minute. The emergency room doctor says, I can't operate on this boy because he's my son. When you tell that story to a large group of people and you really, labor it up and you don't tell them it's a mental test and you ask them, hey, what's wrong with the story? And a lot of people start to see things in that story that are interesting. For example, some people will say, well, how is the emergency room doctor able to say, I can't operate on that boy, he's my son, if the boy's father was killed in the car accident? And there are a lot of reasons, and everybody thinks they have the right answer, but one reason, one of the most obvious reasons is, what if the emergency room doctor is the boy's mother? You see, we've been trained, taught, and educated in our lives, in the society we live in. The little box in our brain, the conceptual reality that says doctor, it's a mailbox. And so what happens is, subconsciously, you don't have to be a sexist person to make this error in thinking. It's a conceptual mistake. You don't even see it. And hi, Kathy. And so what happens in that exercise is your mind immediately says, wait a minute, that doctor was his dad. No, his dad's dead. That doesn't work. And you say, wait a minute, the doctor's the mother. And of course, we all live in a world where you may have had a female doctor, and it's not offensive to you at all, and it's perfectly great, but you still have these conceptual blind spots where you don't realize, hey, that happened to me. But there are other solutions to that dilemma, too. What if the doctor was his stepfather? What if the doctor was his stepmother? What if families come in all different circumstances and this kind of thing. And so the reason I use that example is, when we're talking about liberty and we're talking about social change, and Anthony, I know I didn't make up that analogy. I heard it somewhere. I thought it was a really good one, and I use it. But here's the point. When we have ideas in our mind, conceptual ideas that are what I call big block ideas, and they need to be refined, they need to be broken down, we need to make distinctions. We have weak spots in our thinking. We don't realize where they are. And so when we go out and advocate for liberty, for example, we have the same problem. And we fall into traps that we don't even realize we have set for ourselves mentally because we don't have disciplined thinking and we don't have refined concepts. And so let me give you another example. I was talking to someone just recently about the legal fights that I'm helping in and the cases I'm working on. And I was visiting with a friend in jail. And we were talking about fighting in the legal system and how discouraging it can be. And one of the things that people who love the Constitution and love freedom and love this country want to do is they want to talk about how things should be. They want to talk about what the Constitution means to them, what the rights they have mean to them, what they believe about how the world is or how it should be. And those conversations are awesome conversations to have, but when you're looking at fighting, for example, a particular fight, sometimes those conversations aren't very useful, because sometimes the way the world is and the way the world we engage with operates is much different than the way we had previously imagined, and we have some blind spots and we don't understand how it works. Matter of fact, in the legal system, that's one of the things I encounter all the time. When you go into the courts, people, your average citizen, they have almost a fairy tale view of what happens in courts. And sometimes it's a scary view, and that's why when a lot of people go to court, they feel intimidated, and they should feel intimidated, because the courts have become very tyrannical to a large degree, very hostile to kind of the average person's perspective, and so it makes you feel uncomfortable. You sit in a court and you hear people speaking English, but you don't understand anything that's happening, let alone what if you don't speak English, or if English is your second language. But even if you're an expert in the English language, you could be a professor of the English language, and you listen to these lawyers and listen to these judges. You can even study the law, and you go into these courts and say, well, wait a minute, and you're very surprised at what you see is happening versus what you thought should be happening. And so when you want to fight, when you want to make a change, and this is true anywhere in the cause of liberty, when you want to make a change, one of the things that's very difficult to do is to separate your strategy or your strategic thinking from your sentiment. In other words, the way we want the world to be might be good, and it might be good to advocate for, and that's what drives us and governs us. It kind of we aim that direction. But when you're in a situation you need to solve a problem, you got to have a very realistic view. Sometimes what I say, sometimes I call it the come to Jesus realization, where you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, this is the way it is. I need to come to reality and face facts here, face what is. And in the legal system, that's very hard to do. And so, we just, for example, started this case in the United States of America versus Bundy, just started jury selection today. And a lot of people have already started to comment on how the judge is behaving and how the prosecutors are behaving and how the defense lawyers are behaving and all this kind of thing. And one of the things I'll remind everybody is, remember, there are two battles going on here. There's a broader battle to teach the principles of liberty, to organize the people of liberty, to get people mobilized and effective, etc. And the second battle is to win, for example, in this case, to get innocent people out of jail. Deborah, interesting point. Deborah made a comment here. She says, just stop the liberal indoctrination. Yeah, and follow our laws. It's not that simple. You think it is, but, I was even watching a phone call today. Someone who I think is a friend of liberty made a phone call to the jail and was inquiring about the treatment of how people are being treated in jail. And they use phrases like, well, just follow the Constitution, just follow the law. But you have to remember, those are big block concepts. And what does it mean to follow the Constitution? And what should it mean to follow the Constitution? But what have we as a society done to ourselves in terms of what have we tolerated to this point to get a system that works the way it currently works? Those things sometimes don't line up. And just saying words doesn't actually win the day. Matter of fact, I see people online sometimes say, I saw a comment earlier today that says, well, just say these words. Just call the plaintiff to the witness stand. In this case, it's the government. And when they don't show up, then the case is dismissed. It's like this is some kind of cartoon. And if you just say the magic word, like Aladdin and his magic lamp, somehow the judge who has been going against you this whole time, or who has not been seeing the law the way you're arguing the law, is going to go, oh, yeah, you said those magic words, and everything's going to fall apart, and the walls of the jail are going to come tumbling down, and your guy's going to get out. It doesn't work that way. I'm not saying there isn't some intellectual soundness to some of these ideas that people have and some of these theories that people have, but there's a difference between saying this is the way it should work, this is the way it used to work, this is the way it's supposed to work, and this is the way it does work. And one of the things I would suggest that we all be careful of is when we're listening to people talk about how we should advocate politics, like what we should do about a political issue, what we should do about a legal issue, what we should do in our own life, we need to be very careful that we make distinctions between those who say what we should do and those who have been effective at accomplishing the thing that we're trying to accomplish. See, it's hard to fake success in kind of real world terms. And so with that said, tonight I'm not going to lecture on that or go on, but I'm just challenging everyone to realize we don't always know what we don't know. And the remedy for that, by the way, is associating with like-minded people who are committed to making good progress, doing good things, creating value, serving, and committed to actual progress, not just talk. And listen, there's a role for talking. That's why I'm on the Facebook Live broadcast. You sharing ideas and exchanging ideas is essential. But who are you exchanging ideas with, and who are you giving credibility to with your ideas? It's worth thinking about. The way we win, my friends, is we begin by always checking our own ideas, the premise of our own ideas. And we have to develop a pattern of reflecting and thinking and helping each other and checking each other's thoughts. And so, for example, last night when I was at this dinner with this friend of mine, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to share some ideas and say, hey, here's one idea that'll change the world. And it was true. There's one simple idea. Those of you who remember the dollar and the Hershey bar analogy, if you get that one concept right, it fixes so many blind spots in your mind. You have that one idea wrong, and it's so hard to get right. So with all that said, my friends, that's my invitation to you is when you're out there searching Facebook and you're seeing news stories and you're wondering what we should do, remember, it's easy to get discouraged when you're not making progress and you start thinking, well, maybe there is no way to win. Maybe we just have to give up and wait for Jesus to come back or whatever it is. And listen, I don't mean to disparage the idea of religious faith. We must have faith. But one of the things that we make a mistake on sometimes is we give up, or we let off the pressure, or we back off because we just don't see it making any progress, or we don't see it working. And there is a way to work. There's a way to succeed. And so here's my challenge to you. In the comments to this live stream, if there's a question or a challenge that you're working on, or if you don't feel comfortable doing it in the comments, send me a message on Facebook. If there's something you're struggling with, a challenge, whether it's a political issue, a social issue, a personal issue, and it relates to this concept of freedom, and you want to make some progress, and you haven't been able to make some progress, let's talk about it. And maybe I don't have the answer, but through exchanging ideas and questioning ourselves, we may be able to find blind spots that we each have, and we get stronger together and we move forward together. And that's the power of community. That's the reason I do the broadcast every night, is to build a community of people that are helping exchange ideas, helping us see our blind spots so we can move forward. I'm going to be talking later this week about some things we're going to be doing. If you remember, years ago, we had organized quite a few groups all across the Rocky Mountain West, and I got a little preoccupied over the last 10 years, and we're going to be relaunching that effort, and we're going to be looking for people who want to step forward and lead in this effort to build a community. And so, if that might be you, let me know. But in the meantime, if you've just got an idea, if you've got a struggle, something you're working on, something you want to see move forward, but you feel frustrated because you haven't been able to move forward, drop me a line or post it in the comments here to this live feed, and let's let the community start to chime in. And in terms of the legal case that's going on down here in Nevada, let me just say a couple things. We're currently going through a phase that is called jury selection. The trial has technically started because we started to voir dire or question jurors. And it's a time you learn a lot. A lot of people don't know how this process works, but it's going to take us a couple days to pick the jury. And we'll get a jury, and then we'll move forward with the case. But in the process, remember this. You don't have to win every single step of the way in any fight. You don't have to win. You just have to consistently be on the right path, because over time, truth is consistent. And so if you're on the right side in a cause, the consistency is tremendously important. And oftentimes, small drops of consistent effort, persistent effort, passionate effort, even if you're only moving an inch at a time, makes all the difference. Matter of fact, I will tell you something, and some of you, you're going to need to put your fingers over your ears. You won't like this very much. I'm a pop culture reference, but I'll tell you, there's a great video. There's a scene from an important film, pop culture reference, and I won't name the film, but those of you who are very interested, you'll know you'll be able to find it. But Al Pacino, he's a football coach, and he's given a lecture to his football team, and there's a lot of profanity in it, so don't go looking for this if you're not ready for that. But I'll tell you, back up in Oregon, right before we had some major decisions to make in the case up there, Marcus Mumford, Morgan Philpott, myself, and Hammond Bundy and Ryan Bundy were all sitting down in a room, and Marcus Mumford shared this video with us. And this football coach, he's telling his team, he's trying to motivate his team. He gets very passionate. He talks about how football is actually a game of inches. And you got to fight with everything you have for an inch, and for the next inch, and for the next inch. And there's so many people preoccupied with making the long play, or making the big, visible, thrilling success, that they give up inches after inches after inches. And one of the things you got to do in a cause, and in this legal battle, we're going to be doing this. Sometimes people say, "Why are you fighting for this issue over here? Why are you fighting for that issue over here? We need to be focused here." Well, in a game of life, and in battles, just to gain an inch of ground. And we'll go after an uncontested inch, or we'll go after a contested inch, because we add those inches up and we add those inches up. And over time, you build this bank of inches. And if you understand what I'm saying, that's my invitation to you. Not to get discouraged, but look at the opportunities to gain inches and to fight for inches. And if you have to give everything you have some days just to gain an inch, be happy to gain an inch. Unite with your other friends who are gaining inches, and together we'll gain lots of inches and we'll make lots of progress. So I don't have any much more to say to that. I've got two legal briefs that are due tonight. One in this case and one in another case. We got a lot of work going on. We'll have more detailed updates as things get a little bit more meaty down here, and you're going to get official updates from several people. There's all kinds of good information out there what's going on. But in the meantime, what I'm hoping to do as we chime in here every night is to have some brain-on, thought-provoking activity, and then I'll take questions every night. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call that a wrap for my kind of remarks, and then I'll just open it up and see who's got questions. And I'll take a few minutes here and answer any questions anybody has. So you can type them, and if you've got an iPhone or an iPad, if you're on iOS and you want to come on and do a little split screen here with me, I'll go ahead and click on you and bring you on here to the broadcast. Or you, like I say, you can just type and just type your questions and I'll answer it there. Richard, did my message help you out at all? Yeah, thank you, Richard. I did get that. Thank you. Yep. So, again, if you got any questions, thoughts, feedback, want to know what's going on, need help with anything, let's take a few minutes here and we'll answer those questions. You posted one. Awesome, Pam. Let me take a look. I'll take a look after the broadcast and I'll try to respond to everybody who's posted a question. Well, let's see. I wasn't able to get with you this weekend. Yeah, weekends are good. Michael, if you want to drop me a line, Saturdays are usually a good time to reach me. You can always go to freecapitalist.com, use that phone number there, or use that email there. Or if I've sent you I think I sent you my email, go ahead and use that too. But yeah, absolutely still willing to talk. You bet. Hey, cousin, you joined a little late. We're just wrapping it up. But it's good to see you. All right, this is your 1 minute warning. We'll take questions for one more minute. Then I got to get back to work. I got some writing to do. What about my idea of mass writing to Steve King of Iowa about judicial bias? Well, let me go back to this. Hold on. Oh, great. Now everybody's sending questions all at once. So hold on. Twyla, what about my idea of mass writing to Steve King of Iowa about judicial bias and court corruption? Well, let's think through that one for a minute. And I have to apologize. I remember seeing something that you sent to me. You may have to resend it to kind of cue it back up in my mind. I remember reading something maybe mid last week about that. But remember, when you write to congressmen, if you're just complaining about a problem, for example, judicial bias, or you're just complaining about corruption, that could get it on their radar, and a bunch of people writing about get it on their radar. But one of the things is to write and support a solution, support an idea. So one thing, Twyla, would be to brainstorm on what do we do about persistent judicial bias, particularly in the federal courts. There are two federal court statutes. Excuse me. There are two federal statutes that govern judicial bias and getting rid of or removing judges from cases that are biased. There's a really old one that's called Section 144, I think is what it is, and it requires an affidavit where you allege facts that demonstrate actual bias. But bias isn't just that they're ruling against you, it's that they're inappropriately using something besides the court proceeding or the court record to rule against you. And then there's a newer law, it's called 455, and I'm so tired, I'm trying to remember the full section of the code, I can't. But in that, even just the appearance of bias becomes a way to remove judges, and there's some standards there, but here's the problem. In both instances, you have the judge themselves or one of their colleagues who ends up making the decision on whether that judge gets removed for bias. I'll tell you one thought that's come up in some of the free capitalist circles I've been talking about, and I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on this. To bring a charge against a free citizen under federal law in this country, the founders ensured under the Constitution that charge be brought by indictment. In other words, a selection of our peers has to hear evidence secretly and decide whether there's a cause to bring a criminal charge. Now that process has been really beat up and abused for a long time, but it's still in place. It could be reformed, it could be worked on. And one of the ways to reform that process, one of the thoughts I had was, and we've talked about in the free capitalist forums, is, that's the forum that refers a case to a judge. For example, a grand jury has the authority to sign what's called a true bill, which we refer to normally as an indictment, and that then gets filed in the federal court system, and the federal court system then assigns it, depending on which district, they have different rules on how they assign it, to a particular judge. In other words, what the grand jury is doing is they're putting their trust in a judge to preside over a case that they brought. I always thought it'd be very interesting, instead of having these recusal motions going to the judge or one of his colleagues or one of his peers, is to have that recusal motion go back to a grand jury and have the same grand jury or the same institution that refers these cases to judges be able to evaluate whether there's cause to remove a judge. If they're sophisticated and responsible enough to bring criminal charges against their fellow citizens, aren't they also sophisticated enough to see if a federal judge, if there's cause to believe under these statutes that exist, if there's cause to believe that a judge should be removed? So Congress still gets to write the laws, and Congress still keeps the laws it has in place in terms of what the legal standards are, but we send it back to that same grand jury that has decided that's charged with deciding in all of our lives all across the country if a federal crime has been committed. So why couldn't that same grand jury do that? And why couldn't a jury administrator do something more than push paper around? Interesting idea. I'm not advocating it, but I'm advocating we think about it. That's a good idea. But Twyla, the point here is when you write to congressmen about judicial bias or court corruption or any other issue, it's important to think through and say, well, what is it that I want them to do? Do I just want? Is it like, too often we fall into the pattern of like small children, well, just fix this problem and fix this problem, but really it's up to us to fix these problems and to tell our representatives what we want them to do. And sometimes just saying, well, follow the Constitution doesn't cut it, because we need to be more articulate and say, and here's what that looks like. So I think it's a great idea, and I really like the fact that you've already had some interaction with elected officials who have acknowledged this problem. But I think we need to brainstorm on what can we get behind, and then we go to the community and we actually support an actual particular solution. So anyway, that's a long answer to your question. Let's see, Pam. What do I think is going to happen on November 3rd? With regard to what, Pam? Are you talking with regard to the United States of America versus Bundy? What, I'm not sure what you're referencing, so you have to clarify. Let's see. What message is being sent to the jury about Cliven and the others wearing their jail garb? Well, Sandra, today some questions were asked of the potential jurors, and this will continue, on whether they can be fair and impartial, even though they see why the defendants in this case, United States of America versus Bundy, are dressed in that attire. Generally speaking, what will happen is the jury will be informed that they need to be fair, and they need to not take into consideration that they're wearing their jail clothes as a substantive decision. But we will see. It's yet to be seen how that's going to fully play out. Today, Ryan Bundy did address the jury about that a little bit, and so did the judge. So, I think the message that the guys are sending is, let's just be authentic here. Let's just, let's not cover up and hide what is going on. There's some different schools of thought there. That's their thought. Ammon did that up in Oregon, and we'll see if all four of these guys do that throughout trial. But I don't know if I've answered your question, but if you got a more specific question, go ahead and fire away and go ahead and ask. Let's see. Hi, Margaret. I will tell you, it's always bad to be in this situation because there's huge anxiety at this point in time. But today they were all better than they have been in the last week, in my opinion. And so, all things being equal, today is a good day for hope for them compared to the last week, I'll tell you. So, that's my opinion. Oh, Todd! It's Todd's birthday. Jewel, Todd's on here. We should all sing happy birthday to my cousin Todd. He's the most amazing guy on the whole planet. And he is living in Casper, Wyoming. And let's see, how old is he? He was born in 1972. So that makes him 45 years old. Is that right? Jewel, am I right about that? Holy cow. Well, hey, happy birthday, Todd. Love you. Sorry, I haven't called and told you happy birthday, but now I'm publicly saying to all the people on this live broadcast that my cousin Todd, it's his birthday. Happy birthday to him. So all you free capitalist friends out there, tell my cousin Todd happy birthday. Kelly wants to come in. All right. Kelly, let's see if I can do it. Here we go. Oh, it says like, comment. How do I do it? I'm trying to pull you in. Let's see. Kelly, I'm trying. Let's see. It's not letting me pull you in for some reason. How about some training to help us be the best we can be for the Bundys in specific ways? Maybe start committees that work on specific issues. Interesting, Sean. Send me an email and give me an idea of what you mean by committees and what would that look like. I'm happy to brainstorm with you on that. Absolutely. We could create teams of people that are working on certain things. You bet. You bet. Yeah, Dan, it seems like the marshals have issues with everybody. I can't tell you about it right now, but suffice it to say, we're trying to solve a problem, and we're pretty committed to making sure the problem gets solved. And I'll tell you more about it once it's over. But yeah, yep, that's true. Yes, like a grand jury. Jason Vaughn, Charles. How do we multiply me? Well, I'm multiplying myself, Lisa. Do you see that? I'm 100 pounds more of myself than I was 10 years ago. Oh, I'm teasing. You're multiplying. We got to multiply you. We got to multiply free capitalists. Let's keep getting together every night. Let's keep sharing these ideas, and let's keep magnifying the efforts of those who love liberty in a way that's responsible and credible, where good people can feel good about advocating for liberty. That's what we do. It'll work. You watch. You watch. You watch. This is a seed right here, Lisa. We look here. There's, look at the number of people here on the live stream. Look how many people are commenting. You just remember. You watch this thing. You watch it happen. We're going to multiply. You watch. Let's see. All right, everybody's saying happy birthday to Todd. That's awesome. All right. See, Todd, you're getting more birthday wishes on here than you imagine. Awesome. Yes, Dan, you're right. In disqualifying a judge, you've got to have actual reasons. And again, if you go to section 455, it outlines two different sections. One is the appearance of bias section, and one is presumed bias section. And if you can articulate actual compliance with those sections, that's how you get recusal. Under 144, you have to have facts that establish, for example, like extrajudicial sources of information, like the judge is making decisions based on something the judge learned outside the court proceedings, which isn't subject to the normal rules and processes of court, etc. Yeah, it just can't be emotion or sentiment or dislike or disfavorable opinions, etc. There's a great opinion written on recusal. I'm trying to remember the decision now. I think it's called the Litke case, I think, where there's a reference about how judges sometimes don't recognize their own obdurance. Anyway, sorry. Lisa, all right. I'm wondering why the president can't intervene. Let's see, Hilda says, I'm wondering why the president can't intervene. Well, the president could intervene, but generally speaking, the executive branch of the government is intervening. In other words, the Department of the Interior is a part of the office of the president, and so the head of the BLM, the head of the Forest Service, these people represent the President of the United States. So too, for example, is the Justice Department. It's an executive branch of the government. So Jeff Sessions, the Solicitor General, the people in his office that kind of oversee federal criminal law in their country, they represent the president. The local United States attorneys in each district, they also essentially represent the president. And so for President Trump himself, or whoever might be holding that office, to intervene, what you're really saying is, why doesn't that president override the whole machinery of the executive branch of the government and pardon the Bundys? I know Roger Stone's been talking about that. I know there's been a lot of pressure. Statistically speaking, it never happens. It does happen, but statistically speaking, it's in such a small percentage of the cases. That's not really a strategy. It's more like a Hail Mary pass. And in this case, I'll tell you why the president, so the answer to your question is the president can intervene. But why the president doesn't intervene, generally speaking, is because as a country, our institutions are built with the presumption that the people in them are acting in good faith, and that those institutions are the best method for preserving liberty. Now, we as a people have done really poorly over the last several decades in holding those institutions accountable and engaging with those institutions. We just want to go watch TV and make sure that TV shows we like have new seasons, and that we have the right food that we want to eat, and we want to live in our own world, and once in a while chime in and make a discussion about politics here. But as a people, we've disengaged, and the government has grown and grown and grown like a cancer in many, many ways. And so I'm not so sure that any part of the federal government currently works based upon that idea, that premise. But in answer to your question, so there's kind of an institutional bias in favor of following the processes. And so to get a president to kind of go outside that process, there has to be a really compelling reason. And frankly, in this case, when you get, like, for example, the letters from the legislators up in Idaho and the letters from the legislators down in Arizona, those things cause it to start to rise above kind of your normal minutia and get attention. And I think more of that could potentially get the president to intervene. But at this point, I don't think the president would intervene. I think he would wait to see how the trial bears out. In the justice system, normally, the idea is trust the jury, and if the jury gets it wrong, you can appeal, whether it's through the legal process or through the executive branch or whatnot. And so I think there would probably be a very low likelihood of President Trump, even if he was interested and sympathetic, which I don't know that he is, but even if he were, I think it's very low likelihood that at this point, given that trial has now started, that he would intervene. All right, let's see. Question. I emailed Governor Brian Sandoval today. Good, yeah. How do you get more evidence in for the defense? Well, one of the things, Cheyenne, you need to understand is in trial, not all evidence is admissible. There are rules that have been developed over time that generally the idea is the rules are designed to make sure that the evidence that is admitted at trial is fair. But there are also processes that have to be followed. In other words, the court will set deadlines and say, okay, if you want certain evidence excluded, you have to make your arguments by this deadline. If you want certain evidence included, you need to make arguments by this certain deadline. And that's where you have to have good legal representation or be really on the ball as an individual to make sure you comply with those rules. And what I saw in the prior two trials is there wasn't very good litigation on those evidence issues. I don't want to get too much into detail here, but I will tell you there has been some good evidentiary rulings, pretrial evidentiary rulings in this case that set this case apart from prior trials down here related to this. And so I think we will get more evidence in for the defense in this trial. Hi, Tara Lee. Who won the beard thing? I think you're going to have to remind me, did I offer a competition for a person? What was the competition, Marty? You have to remind me, because I'll pick a winner, but I never did pick a winner. I don't remember what that was. Let's see. Oh yes, we've got many people in court who are making sure that we're getting a record of everything that's happening. Absolutely. Remember, he's my friend and he's my colleague, but just so you guys understand, Morgan Philpott is a special fella, and the fact that he's in that courtroom among some of these other attorneys who are also, I'm very happy with how this legal team for this trial is coming together and the work they're doing. The Federal Defender's Office is doing tremendous work. Brett Whipple, Cliven's attorney, really has impressed me recently. And Ryan Bundy Standby Counsel, interestingly enough, is really impressive. And so we've got a good team in there. But Morgan Philpott, he's a good fellow. It's hard for me to explain how much confidence I have in the fact that he's there in that courtroom. So which one was the winning look, 1, 2, or 3? I think the beard with the white was the winning look, and then this was number 2, and then the black beard, I think someone said that just looked too, well, there were lots of judgments of that. So let's see. I think I did all that. I still want to try to bring Kelly on, but Kelly, I don't know why it's not letting me bring you on here. Make another comment. Let me click on you here. Seems like we should be able to do that. Is bail too high? In the federal system, Debbie, most people, they don't even have to post bail. The Bail Reform Act, generally speaking, is supposed to make it so that, generally speaking, you don't ever have to post bail. And bail here isn't the issue. The reason the people here were detained is because a magistrate judge found that they were either a flight risk or dangerous to the community. And sadly, some of these defendants that have been sitting in jail this whole time, they've never even asked for an evidentiary hearing to challenge that finding. And that's frustrating. But bail is not the problem here. It's a different problem. All right. Well, you guys, I'm going to call it a night. Kelly, I'm sorry I didn't get you on here. We'll try it again tomorrow. I do want to start doing split screens with some of you, want to make comments, want to participate in the broadcast, etc. But in the meantime, keep your brain on, keep yourself engaged. Remember, it matters how you stand. And come back here. I'll meet you back here at 9 o'clock Pacific Time, 10 o'clock Mountain Standard Time tomorrow on the Free Capitalist broadcast. All the best.